take out your notebook, the end of last class period, I asked you to write down one thing that you wanted to remember or apply about teamwork. Dig back before the weekend. It could have been teamwork. It also could have been about adapting organizations. We played that role play with the different bouncy balls across the different types of task interdependence. So I'm going to ask one or two of you to share what is something that you remember from last class. I'm assuming so. It's not mine.
That's right.
What are some things you remember, Bailey?
One of the things I wrote down that was in the PowerPoint was that teamwork equals success, and businesses that have failed often lack teamwork.
Right. It's a competitive advantage, and we don't pay enough attention to the dynamics of teamwork and building that. Because why? Do you remember why?
Because it's not measurable. If it's, yeah, teamwork is measurable.
Very tough to measure. Financial goals, marketing campaigns, technology and benchmarking, how more productive you are based off of the implementation of new technology. Those are things that are very easily measured. But teamwork, how do you pinpoint the success back to teamwork and team dynamics? It's tough. And what other things do you remember?
Well, we talk about good communication between each department.
Yes. Why is that communication more important today than it's been in the past?
Because you can be in the same page, so everyone is going to achieve the goal more easily, and it's going to be faster process.
It's faster, it speeds up, so it's improving our efficiency, and it's oftentimes improving the quality, but it's complicating things. And we saw bouncy balls going across all four corners of the room, and so people drop the ball at times, and that happens all the time in communication if we're not careful with communication. Anything else that stuck out from last class?
I said you cannot make great music by yourself. Like the people sing, it's not going to sound as good as if it's just you.
Yes. You're making music when you're on a team, and you're relying on other people to bring their contributions to that team dynamic. Okay, so we're going to pick up here with teamwork and wrap up that chapter before we move on to HR systems. And actually, most of today, what I'm going to be doing is flipping across two perspectives in HR, both you as a hiring manager and then you as a candidate applying for a job. And that's going to set you up for next week's activity in class, where we're going to conduct interviews up front in the classroom. So you'll prepare to be interviewed, and you'll prepare to interview someone else. And then we'll get to critique and talk about best practices. Okay, so teamwork, going off of what you guys have mentioned. A Case for Relationships. This is a book that Tom Rafe published, and he said that friendships are incredibly important at work. And in fact, he said that research studies show that employees that have best friends at work are 7 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs. So in this book, he talks a little bit about how the word friend is overused. The book is actually called Vital Friends. And he qualifies it with that word, vital friends, because friends are a dime a dozen, it seems, the way we use that word today, especially with the invention of Facebook. You've got people who you've barely had a conversation with, maybe never had a conversation with, who are considered, quote unquote, your friends on Facebook. And so we've reduced the value and the meaning of what a true friendship is. And he qualifies that and says, a friend isn't just someone who's going to eat lunch with you. It's not just someone who's going to help you move houses or locations. A vital friend, a truly vital friend, is someone who improves your quality of life and enhances your emotional well-being. And that is the definition of a vital friend. And he says that we need a certain number of these in our life to feel engaged and to feel happy. And he says, it depends if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Introverts can often do with a smaller number of friends, whereas extroverts might need quite a few vital friends in their life. They said there's something about the number 3 and 4. You need at least 3 or 4 vital friends, no matter whether you're introvert or extrovert, that having below that doesn't give you as much of that richness, and that doesn't necessarily lead to depression, but that satisfaction is diminished when you don't have at least 3 or 4. And he goes on to talk about the different qualities of friendships and why you need that 3 or 4 is because not one friend is going to encompass all those characteristics that you need to feel supported. But he says that this is so critical in a job environment because you need someone to be a champion of you. You need someone who, when you're up for promotion, will encourage you and inspire you to believe in yourself, to think you are worthy of that. If you've made a mistake at your job, where you need to have someone that you can be confident and go to them, and it's not going to be gossiped up and down the hall, that you can treat them as your confidant and rely on them to be a good sounding board with good advice and wisdom. And so he makes this case that people who have those vital friends in the workplace and in the work environment are more engaged. So how do you create that in a work environment? You can't force people to be friends. And he says, in fact, don't go about it trying to do that. People will naturally gravitate towards the people who get them and understand them if you create those spaces. And so he was an advocate for break rooms and said, twice as more are likely to have a best friend at work if the organization has just a basic break room. And so that kind of tags off of what we mentioned, team building exercises that allow people to get to know each other socially, where you're not always laser focused on the task at hand, but that then enables you to feel more productive and a stronger contributor when you are working on the task. So being a very independent and task-driven culture, we forget about some of these things and how the whole person comes to work, they don't just bring their technical skills, they bring their whole personality at work, and they need to feel engaged. It says 80 to 90% of our success is based on our ability to interrelate with others. How are you persuasive? Do people like working with you? Whether we like this fact or not, research studies say this, and you'd be surprised more often than not that a very important decision is being influenced by other friendships and those connections and networks in the industry or in your organization. And so your ability to be heard, your ability to impact, has direct correlation with your interpersonal skills. There's 5 dysfunctions of a team that Lencioni introduces. And he says that they're layered. They're like this pyramid. So at the bottom of a team, and you guys can probably relate to this, right? You've had a variety of team experiences, or maybe they're from high school, or maybe you still are going to have them in your college career. Whether it's a mission team, a place you work, or a project that you've worked on before, think about these different layers. The first dysfunction of a team is a lack of trust. Trust is like oxygen. If you don't have trust, it spirals out into these other problems up the pyramid. But trust is the foundation. If you can't be yourself in a group, if you feel disrespected in a group, you're going to shut down and you won't share many of your opinions. And that's equivalent to restricting the airflow in your lungs. If you can't have respect and openness on a team, you are restricting that airflow, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And without oxygen, we're not much good as human beings, right? That's the same thing on a team. That translates into fear of conflict. So if you can't trust each other, you're not able to voice and hear everyone's opinions on a team. And so your meetings are boring. They're not constructive because you're not tapping into the potential of team dynamics. That leads to a lack of commitment, which can be analysis paralysis. So the team can't pick a direction or decide to go one way or the other. Everyone's kind of stepping on toes, but not really ever getting anywhere. And that leads to an avoidance of accountability. So you're not holding someone ownership over a piece of the project, which then leads to inattention to results. And you're gonna lose top-notch employees who are achievement-oriented, who want to feel the progress. So each of these kind of layer into one another that create dysfunction. Think about this quote. John Mack Carter says, "Always remember the distinction between contribution and commitment. Take the matter of bacon and eggs. The chicken makes a contribution, the pig makes a commitment." What am I getting at here? You can laugh, it's okay. It's cheesy, but what is it getting at here?
The pig gives like everything because the chicken just lays the egg, so it just gives part of itself that it can produce more of. But the pig gives everything it has. 'Cause you can't just take half the pig and like it'll survive.
Right, that's a lot greater risk for the pig. He dies, okay? How does this relate to teamwork?
Like,
I'm just thinking about it like, there's a team that I'm on right now where we're all contributing, but nobody's actually made the effort to say, hey, we're gonna put everything into this, we're gonna do very well, and it doesn't matter if it's gonna take time, it doesn't matter if it's gonna take brain power, but we're gonna do what it takes, and that really makes it hard for us to give good work, because nobody's making a commitment, we're just contributing things half-heartedly.
Okay. So yeah, on a team, you may have varying degrees of contribution and commitment. You can think of it on a spectrum. And if everyone is kind of different, unequal in their willingness to commit, then you have this dissension and you end up kind of landlocked. You're standing still and you can't go anywhere. And so you can see where you want to form a team with people who have similar goals, who are willing to put skin in the game. I like to use that phrase in investment. You want to have something enough at risk that you will feel sacrifice if it's lost. And if not everyone has that, if someone can just contribute but not really care where it goes, the team will flounder. So there's these 5 stages you remember from the chapter on teamwork that every team goes through, and it's forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And no matter what team you are on, no matter if you are all high achievers, you've got the capable technical skills, you've got the interpersonal skills, you are the dream team, or not, or vice versa, you all go through these stages. It's just that some go through the stages faster than others. So at the start, everyone's very polite to each other. In the forming stage, you might not know each other very well, there's introductions, there's not a lot of deadlines going on yet, and so people are there's not as much tension going on, because no one's not performed yet. It's not until later when the performance issues start happening. The storming stage, that's when you start to realize you have different opinions about the quality of your work. Think about this based off of the psychological jump it takes to go from individual performance to team performance. It can be extremely frustrating. I know some of you feel that, even in team projects right now. You would rather control all of the pieces because you can rely on your own work ethic. But on a team, you have to rely and sync up with other people who have different perceptions of teamwork and work ethic. So there starts to be control issues. In the norming stage, you're able to talk through and voice some of those frustrations and meet common ground and talk about what you want future quality of work to look like. So you start to overcome some of those battles, and that pushes you into the performing stage, where results go up, everyone seems to understand what they give to a team, and they're working hard towards that goal, and there's that commitment. To the adjoining stage, either if it's a task force or a project that has a completion date, you disband, or you go through the cycle again if you are starting a new challenge. You would kind of rock your way through that. And it very much is kind of like a sailboat where you're rocking on waves at some point and you're disagreeing on things. But that disagreement is actually healthy. That conflict is healthy if you can push your way out of it. Because what the conflict does is it is allowing people with different opinions and voices to feed into the process, and then you're agreeing on the best solution. And if you have lots of disagreement, that actually helps you land on a better solution. But if you're just stuck in the disagreement and it's happening because of clashes in personality, then you don't get through this stage very quickly. So you can see this is kind of what it looks like. You can't see my words as well here, but forming, storming, norming, and performing. And so you can see on the bottom layer are people who aren't getting through the process as effectively because they haven't spent enough time devoted to teamwork and team dynamics. And so the gap between performance levels at the end is significant. So thinking about that as a manager, efficiency and effectiveness, over time it's going to take you longer to get to results that are not as high quality as if you were working through team dynamics. So the basic recommendations for teams and for successful teams is to keep it small in number. There is a big difference between 5 people on a team and 6 people on a team. Not exclusively, not in all cases, but what happens when you shift from 5 to 6?
There's no point in voting on things, because you could have
You can't vote, there's no majority, you could have 3 on 3, so then how does the decision get made? You have to go through consensus, which could keep you in that muddled ground for a long time. And what else?
If the 6th person is like new in the group, so he or she can feel like unuseful or something.
Okay, I'm not so much saying adding a 6th person, so say all 6 started out together. But if you were looking at a team of 6 people who started out together, and you're looking at a team of 5 people who started out together, what are some of the struggles the 6-man team might face that the 5-person team doesn't? I'm kind of just asking for your opinions here. I know you haven't necessarily read research on it. I'll tell you what the research says.
You're more likely to have social loafing.
Social loafing, yes. Remember social loafing? Those are the slackers. So it's a little bit easier on a 6-person team for someone to disconnect and to not do their work. Why would that be true for 6 people versus 5? There's still enough people on the team. There's still enough heads and brains working on the problem or the task at hand, versus if you are 3 people and someone is a slacker, you've got 2 people left, and they're going to be extremely stressed and frustrated by it. So people, when you have 6 people and you have 5 left over to do the work, they're oftentimes more gracious. They will let you slide by. Everybody on the team knows who's a slacker. While it's not stated explicitly in a team meeting, people know and people see that. But when you have still 5 people, there's still enough of a team dynamic going on that you might choose to be more gracious. When you're a smaller team, it's not going to cut it. It's too painful for the rest of the team to shoulder your work. They're more apt to call you out on that. Okay. So smaller numbers, choose people who have complementary skills. I really liked one of you talked about your manager's interview where they said, choose people who excel at your weaknesses. Was that in this class?
Justin.
It was Justin? That was you, yes. So he said, choose people to surround yourself that excel at your weaknesses. Yes, find those complementary skill sets and don't be shy to say what you're weak in. Be really strong in your strengths and be forthcoming with your weaknesses. And that's one of the tips for your first team meeting as you're sitting down and forming. Be brutally honest. If you're not a good writer, You let the team know you're not a good writer, but if you're a good presenter, or you're a good researcher, good analytical skills or good design skills, lay those out on the table, throw them out for each other to see, and not to be nervous about thinking about how those will combine for the task at hand. Look for people who are good problem solvers, good decision-making skills, not on here, but also visionary. I say a big picture view, that's a very different kind of skill. If you get all visionaries on a team, you're going to struggle to get much done, but you're going to really inspire. You'll have an inspirational idea, but just not much execution. So you've got to balance these complementary skills, and then interpersonal skills. Picking people who are humble, picking people who can admit when they're wrong, who can listen to others. Looking for people with a common purpose and performance goals. Iron sharpens iron. And so you gather people together who want to achieve that direction, and you're going to stay more motivated, and the morale of that team will match the challenge at hand. And finally, mutual accountability. So having people where you can confront and encourage each other, but really have that open communication to move on the project. So some of the values for teamwork skills, and as you work through this list, you might think, which of these do I struggle with? And being honest with yourself on that. Because it's rarely do we think about how difficult we are to work with on a team. We can quickly point out the flaws in someone else, but we tend to think of ourselves in high esteem and that we're really excellent team members if everyone else would just cooperate. But really dig deep to understand, what's it like to be on a team with yourself? Do you listen to others? Do you respond constructively? So what do I mean by this? Constructive. You'll find some people on a team are great at finding holes, why something won't work. And that's a good skill to have because it's going to sharpen your final product. But the problem is if that person on the team, every meeting, they are communicating why a certain strategy or idea won't work. They're killing the idea over and over and over again, but not providing any solution. Really important to understand if you're that kind of person, to balance it enough with trying to say, okay, I don't think that will work, but what about this? If you never come to the table with solutions, people will look at you really negatively. Giving others the benefit of the doubt. So if someone says something in a way that feels like they're attacking your idea, recognize that maybe it has nothing to do with you. Recognize they might not be trying to battle you. Maybe it's something else completely different that's happening in their home life or their personal world. And we forget that too. We take things so personally, we forget that it could be something completely different than what's at that meeting. Supporting people who need support. Not everybody is going to have the same technical capabilities on a team as you. So if you see someone you can train up and bring them alongside, do that. Recognize the interests of others. So letting people work on aspects of the project that light them up, even if that means you don't get your top piece of the project, it's helpful to give and take. So I'll leave you with this quote. Harry Truman says, "You can accomplish anything in life provided that you do not mind who gets the credit." Very true quote in teamwork, that it's less about yourself and more about the whole. Any questions on teamwork in that chapter? Okay, we're going to move on to HR systems. So chapter 11, human resource systems. And really important chapter when we think about the kinds of questions we ask in management about human dimension, the human component of management. And these structures and these systems relate to hiring and firing. And so that's the very essence of dignity and respect for other human beings. And so for the next, we're going to practice interviews next week, but after that, spring break. We'll take a break. Yes. And then you'll get back, and we're going to continue kind of on this stream of performance and how you give feedback and how you communicate and interrelate based off of these HR systems and structures. So the next several chapters are actually pretty closely related. So human resource management. What expectations do you have for entering the current job market? I'm curious to get your thoughts. As maybe seniors getting ready to go into the job market, or maybe you're not, maybe you're freshman, sophomore, junior, but what kinds of expectations do you have about entering the workforce? Excited, nervous, anticipate what it will be like? I know it's raining outside, but wake up with me here. There's no right or wrong answers to this.
I think it's pretty similar to, same thing when you graduate high school, you're a senior, you go to college, and you're the youngest again. So I anticipate it being kind of exactly the same of, okay, I'm about to graduate here, accomplishing this, life's, and then enter the job market, it's like, okay, now you're back in the place again.
Yeah, you're kind of cycling through back to zero, where you've built up this reputation and these accomplishments in college. When you get into the workforce, you're at the bottom rung of the ladder again. You don't have that reputation, that same familiarity and understanding about where and how you contribute. It's fair representation. Yeah. What else? Tori?
I think for me, I would expect like me learning more about the real world. Like, I know when I graduate, I'll have a lot of this textbook knowledge that will be able to help me with my job, but then like learning the company that I get into, like how they run things and how they do things, and just, I guess, learning more than what I learned at school. But I guess
Sure.
building on to that, so.
Yeah, how it applies, it's a different process. The application for this material, while you might be grounded in it, depending on the company and the industry and those factors, that application process is different. You mentioned something else too there in your answer, that to me, you mentioned like navigating a new workplace, just what are the accepted norms? What do you think about that when we enter a workplace? Even little silly things, like when you write an email to someone and they respond, do you reply back just thanking them and confirming them, or not? Do you cut the email trail off there? There are little nuances like that, depending where you work, as to what the norms are. Yeah. Anything else?
I guess my expectation is not that the first job I have is gonna be my dream job. Like, I'm expecting to have to go through a little bit of a growing process of figuring out what is the job that I have in my future and getting the basic skills of being in the workforce.
Okay. Does anyone disagree with that? How many would agree that you kind of feel that way too? Your first job isn't going to be your dream job. Would anyone disagree with that?
No, I disagree.
You what?
I disagree.
Okay, why?
Okay, my example would be like, okay, I love soccer, so I think I am planning to do my internship in FIFA. It's like the Federation of Soccer around the world. So if I do a good job, I can get hired from after I graduate. So I think that will start the process to get my dream job. But I'm in the place that
Okay.
one of my dreams is to do my internship there.
Okay.
Okay,
So it might not necessarily land you in the exact position you want to be, but that company will push you through a career path that will get you that role.
Oh yeah, but it could be. My first job could be my dream job. That doesn't mean I'm gonna be like satisfied for that job. I will seek more.
So you might change and grow into other dream jobs over time.
Yeah, dream positions, I would say.
Do what?
A dream position, I would say.
Okay. So I asked this question, even the nature of the job market has changed so much So I have these statistics, says today, the average worker stays at their job for almost 4.5 years. How many of your parents had one job most of your growing up years? How many had more, how many had 2 jobs, 2 or more?
Like, do you mean at the same time, or like, do you mean like they went through one job and then
They switched,
They
they
switched,
switched
okay.
career paths or changed jobs.
Between like companies?
Yeah,
Or
like
Between companies.
Okay.
Companies.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, different companies. What about 3 or more? 4 or more? 5 or more? 5, 6? Okay, how many, Calvin?
More than, about 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, bring that illustration up, the rate at which people are changing jobs is drastically increasing. So as I grew up, my parents have only ever held 2 different jobs, like significantly different roles, all still part of the same organization. That's rare today, and that's going to be even more rare for you, and that complicates an HR manager's job tremendously because it costs a lot of money to recruit a new employee. So the average worker now stays somewhere 4.5 years. 91% of millennials expect to work less than 3 years in a certain job at a certain company. Really expecting to jump around more. They say the average 25-year-old has already worked 6.3 jobs, and they're just 25 years old. Why? Because there's a lot more visibility on both sides for those jobs. So being able to recruit and publicize the job information, those channels have increased. And even the process of relocating to another city or another town, companies will pay those costs. Not as many people feel the need to live tight-knit communities next to their families. And so a variety of trends are adding to this, that more people are rotating through more jobs and jumping around. So the process, we think about HR management and the systems that are associated with human resource management, and there's basically 3 buckets. You have attract, develop, and retain. So when you are attracting employees, you are recruiting and selecting candidates. When you're developing employees, you're training them in the skill sets needed to do their job. Maybe they go to conferences, maybe they participate in workshops, get some kind of specialized certification and training for that. You're also reviewing their performance, and you're setting goals for them to keep improving. So that's kind of those one-on-one performance evaluation metrics that would exist in HR. And then retention. So you are putting together benefits packages or incentives for them to stay within the company. If that's not attractive enough, then they leave.